This is World Awakenings, the fast track to enlightenment with your host, Carl Gruber. World Awakenings is a podcast dedicated to opening your mind, your heart, and your eyes to the fact that the world's population is now, more than ever, awakening to all things spiritual, metaphysical, and enlightening, and just how they play an all-important role in our daily life. So join Carl on this enlightening experience as he interviews metaphysical and spiritual experts to discuss, debate, and delve deeply into the hows and whys of this worldwide awakening.
All of us are looking for a life of meaning and significance. A life that makes a difference in the world. A life that truly matters. We believe this is found through the right people, platform, and purpose. We call this movement 3. It starts with giving people greater health through the power of our proactive wellness products. 3's innovative formulas deliver demonstrable results by maximizing bioavailability and cellular absorption, ensuring people everywhere can enjoy the nutrition they need to operate at their best. Building on our foundation of people-focused products, we provide a platform for unparalleled entrepreneurship and personal growth. 3 is there beside you every step of your journey towards building a business and a better life. Finally, we know that a sense of real purpose, the kind that moves hearts, minds, and mountains, comes through serving and elevating others. This philosophy is reflected in our caring community, which bring hope and life-saving help to people around the world. It's time to redefine what's possible and activate your full potential. It's time to live a life of purpose. It's time for 3.
Welcome to episode number 141 of World Awakenings, the fast track to enlightenment. I'm your host, Carl Gruber. Now, after 5 years of doing this, we continue to explore and look for the answers to all things spiritual, metaphysical, and enlightening. Now, before we meet our guests, please take a moment to check out my book, True Spirituality and the Law of Attraction, a book that will help you to build a rock-solid personal foundation for your life so you can live the life you love and love the life you live. Just click the link below in the show notes to get your copy today. And with this in mind, let's get right to it and meet our featured guest for this show. Isabeau Maxwell is a medium and one of the world's leading spiritual coaches in intuitive development. She brings a deep channeled knowledge and personal understanding to the field of spirituality. Isabeau's introduction into spirituality and intuition was an interesting one, to say the least. In 2005, at the age of 32, she went from being a total skeptic to a psychic medium in one shocking, life-changing moment when her grandmother appeared in Isabeau's living room just moments after her grandmother had passed away. Now, this experience shook her from her scientific corporate mind way of life into a world of spiritual possibilities. Isabeau is trained with her spirit guide for 2 years to hone her own intuition and learn how to show others to easily do the same for themselves. She is the founder of the award-winning intuitive development course called the Sage Method, and she is the author of the best-selling book, Cracking Open: Adventures of a Reluctant Medium. I'm excited to hear about that. You can find her at her website, thesagemethod.com. And so with that, welcome, Isabeau. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and now did I see, do you prefer to be called, I saw on your website, just Beau?
Yeah, a lot of people just call me Beau. It's a heck of a lot easier, and I've been called Beau for so long that's what most people use.
B-E-A-U. That's interesting because, how many people probably call you Isabel right away, right?
I think that's where it started years back. It was, it's very natural, Jennifer, Jessica, Shannon, Sharon, and Isabeau falls very naturally into Isabel. So I just stuck with Beau.
Well, obviously, your story is really interesting, and so I like to dive in. And so, you're a medium and a teacher who helps other people access their own psychic and medium abilities. But let's find out more about you earlier in your life when you lived a more scientific, mathematical type of life and had a mind with and didn't believe in anything beyond the physical world. But when your grandmother passed away, that led to a 180-degree turnaround in your understanding of reality. What happened?
It shook me. It really did. I'm grateful today because my life is 1,000 times better as a result of all of this. But it wasn't until I was 32 that I opened up. And before that, I mean, I have a math degree from college. Very business oriented and things like this. 1 plus 1 needed to equal 2. Like that was my security blanket. I was a skeptic only in that I didn't have religion or spirituality in my life. I wasn't trying to prove anything wrong. To be honest, I didn't have any time for it or interest in it. And I thought it was all a bunch of fraud. So 32 years old, my grandmother's passing. We were across the country from each other. And so I was able to be on the phone with my family who was in the hospice room with her. So I was there, but I wasn't there. And it was the middle of the day. She passed, and my family ran to the grocery store to get some comfort food. Actually, it was a very loving move. And I was alone in the apartment and stood there trying to decide if I got a flight or if I fall apart. What do I do? This was this was like my mom.
Mm-hmm.
And she showed up in my living about 10 feet in front of me. She popped, it literally looked like she popped in.
Wow.
And it wasn't even out of the corner of my eye because I could have blown that off, right? But she popped in about 10 feet in front of me, 70% solid, which a little bit of the kind of creepy, scary factor there for me in the moment was that she was 30% transparent and that she was even right there, and she smiled and she winked and then she, again, popped right out. And I had never had an experience necessarily like that before. I instantly panicked. It was a moment of startle. We'll say startle. That's a great way to say it. And then I instantly said, that's grief. I hallucinated. I'm just going to move on with my life. And didn't say a thing. Woke up the next morning, and my husband at the time said, and the next morning, because I didn't say anything, because that's not part of my world. And that's just, hallucinating. The next morning he said, I had a dream about your grandmother, and it was really realistic. It was weird. Like I actually was talking to her, and this is what she was wearing. And he described exactly what she was wearing when she showed up the day before. And it was that moment that I went, huh, maybe I need to just explore if this is really possible. I could be wrong. I'm not stubborn scientific. I'm open scientific. So let's scientifically prove this. Carl, I was going to complete and yeah. I didn't completely prove anything other than after a few months of exploring spirituality, intuition, trying to find people that were outside of my circles that knew about spiritual paths. After a few months, I was able to start getting proof that I could not turn around from. And here I am today.
Did you have a career based in science and math before that?
I didn't because I was raising my 2 kids. So I was a stay-at-home mom. We had a construction company. So I handled, booking, accounting, all of that kind of stuff, running the company from sort of that office perspective. When I got out of school, I was going to be an accountant. That was going to be that's my puzzle piece, love the numbers, kind of hang out with spreadsheets all day. That was it. But I did take time to raise my kids, and they were still young. They were like 7 or 8. And so I hadn't gotten back necessarily to any type of full-time career at that point.
So your grandmother makes this quick but super dramatic appearance to you shortly after she died. This incredible experience. How long did it take you overall to shift from your own understanding that our bodies are not the be all end all, and there's an entirely unseen spiritual energetic realm we go to exist in. I mean, that it must not have been a quick shift, but it did happen, right?
Exactly. It wasn't a quick shift. It took probably a year, really,
Hmm.
to step in and say, okay, all right. And the reason why my book has the word reluctant in the title is because I was very reluctant. I didn't want to be seen as crazy. I was really caught up in the material world of like what people think of you. And that's really how I was raised. And so this was a big stretch for me, right? And I even met with a therapist who was a wonderful therapist. He worked with me for the first 2 years because I kind of needed to balance this from all different angles. And it took probably a good year for me to go, okay, I get it now. I understand why we're here. Much of that was done alone. Much of that was done on my own, not wanting to tell anybody what was going on and things like this. So
Well, I was going to ask that, so you go from being a homemaker, an accountant, taking care of books for your construction company. When you transition to becoming a professional medium, how did your friends and family take, what was their take on the change in you then?
that was difficult. That was difficult. I had a few friends that thought I had completely lost it and gone insane and, oh, you're sucked into a cult. I'm like, who's my cult leader? Because I'm not talking to anybody about this. So like, they jump right to that fear-based thinking because the reality is I had surrounded myself with skeptics, not on purpose, but that's how I lived as well. And the reality of skepticism is that there really is a security blanket with skepticism. And there's nothing actually wrong with being a skeptic. I have a lot of people today that say, oh, do you want to meet with a skeptic and prove that? I don't want to prove anything to any skeptics because that's where they're at. That's their role. That's their life. Right. And for us to say, oh, be open to what we're doing, we have to be open to what someone else is not doing as well. So skepticism, I found for myself, going from skepticism to being open and trusting what really is happening for me, I had to let go of that security blanket. Because when you close the door at night, Carl, and you lock it, you're safe. There's no one can get in. And then if you open up to these possibilities, a front door lock doesn't really stop interaction. So there's some control comfort in being a skeptic. And I had to walk through what that was to let that go. Some of my friends and family, not really family. I have a very small family. I'm an only child. I have a very small, it's not the big type of family. And some of my family members later said, yeah, we've had experiences as well, but they were there was a border put between me and them with my mom, and so that was kind of kept away from me. It was more so the transition of the friends. Some of the friends were like, I just can't get on board with you anymore. I had one friend say, if this is real, I don't want to be friends with you because if I do anything wrong, you'll see it. And I was like, okay, I think this is a great exit to maybe not the best friendship anyway. So we're gonna move on.
You said, okay, bye.
Okay, I'm gonna go. This is odd. And today I have friends that understand it. Some of them, very much live in that same spiritual pattern as well. And I have friends today that love unconditionally, regardless of what your path choice is. And that's a huge perk to what happened to me.
Well, it's interesting. For me personally, being a practitioner of spirituality and podcasts with metaphysics and enlightenment, a spiritual student of A Course in Miracles, literally None of my personal friends in my life are into what I do. But you know what? I decided a long time ago, it's not my job to change them or to argue with them about this. And I just go, hey, did you see the game last night? It's great, normal conversation. But doing what I do, I have an entire network of 1,000 different light workers and people like you and I that I can connect with on a moment to moment basis. And so, yeah, really, if you have people who don't jive with what you're doing, just don't argue with them. Just live your own life and be happy.
That's a really good point. I have one friend that has remained with me through this entire process who is not spiritual. And we don't align spiritually or politically. But this woman is such an incredible soul, and we love each other unconditionally. So we connect on family and adventures and what's going on at home and things like that. So that's really the difference. People say, I'm going to lose friends. Well, you are, but only ones that don't accept you for who you are.
Yeah. Well, I would like to find out about this. I saw that you trained for 2 years with your spirit guide. Can you tell us about that? Who is your spirit guide?
His name was Big Dog. Well, he still is a guide of mine, but I had a lot more interaction with him back then. He was what I would have considered my main guide back then. So grandma shows up in my living room. It takes me about 3 months, right, to start to be able to connect with her again. It wasn't an instant thing. I was using some tools that were given to me by a local Tai Chi instructor. I was finding my way into the circles, right? And uh, I would say about a year after that, maybe not even a year, I was visiting a friend's house, and this was a friend that was open spiritually and whatnot, but it was more, we connected because of all the kids. And they lived within a set of woods, and I was leaving and I felt pulled to the woods. Now, I'm a city girl. So I might adventure and RV and things like this, but you won't really catch me in the woods too much. But I was pulled, and every time I came, I kept being pulled. And then I started to see what looked like a heat signature. You know how you see a heat signature on a hot road? It
Mhm.
looked like that, but it was in the form of what a general outline of a person. And I was really floored by this because at this point, I was just happy that I had a communication and connection with my grandmother. Like that was a win for me, right? And I wasn't looking for anything. So I said to my friend, this is going on. And my friend said, go out there and sit down and see what's happening. And I did. And gradually I got to start communicating with this person in spirit form. And I said, what's your name? And I remember him saying, which one? And I went, oh, okay. That I didn't, my mind was a little spinning there. And I said, well, can I just call you Big Dog? Because he just felt really big. And he was like, yeah, you can call me Big Dog because that'll work. And he just
Like,
kept telling, yeah, and I'm like, you have a really big presence. Can I just, and he said, he just kept saying, come back on Wednesday, come back on Saturday. And he would give me the days to come back and chat with him. I journaled everything he taught me. He was the one for about well over a year, almost 2 years, taught me how to do the inner work, taught me how everything worked intuitively, taught me about the dimensions, about the in between, all this type of stuff. And it was so wonderful working with him because I would go out there, he would teach me some things, and then I would go out back into, what we call the 3D world, right? Just my regular life. And signs would come in randomly that would confirm what he taught me the day before. And I was like, this is really cool. I remember even saying that to him. I went out once and said, sometimes when you tell me something, I'll go home and then a sign will show up and it'll confirm it. And he goes, yes, because you need that, because you're very thick-headed and stubborn. And I'm like, that's really true. And so and he was my first guide. He was the one that said, people have guides. I am your guide. I'm here to teach you XYZ. At the end of that, he said, I want you to take, at the end of training with him, I was doing readings for other people. I was a professional reader. I was starting to do community gatherings and things like this of a spiritual nature. And he said, I need you to take everything that I taught you, put it together, bring it out into the world, and teach other people how to open up to their intuition. So I inadvertently, Carl, became the poster child for if I can do it, anyone can do it. Yeah.
I like that. So when you were talking to Big Dog, did you hear words, or was it just mind communication?
I hear, I would say more mind communication because I don't hear outside.
Mhm.
I've only heard something 2 or 3 times in the last 18 years outside, as if it was another living person saying it. But when I do hear him, I hear his voice inside. So it's not my voice, it is definitely his voice, and it's usually unexpected.
Interesting, interesting. Well, I think this would be a good time for us to find out about the book you wrote called Cracking Open Adventures of a Reluctant Medium. Why did you decide to write this book?
That book is actually a memoir written in story form of those first 2 years. And for me to go from where I was at to where I was as a professional intuitive and teaching others, I had a lot of people saying, "How did you get here?
Hmm.
How did this happen?" Like, because my approach to teaching intuition is a little bit different. It comes from more of that analytical, this is how everything works type of point of view. And, everyone has a different learning style and everyone has different teaching styles. And so the people that I met would be like, "Tell me how you got here." So I eventually wrote it down because I had told the story so many times to so many people. I was like, let's put it into a book. And the book ended up being a really fun read because, like I said, it's in story format, but it's great because it's the type of book that somebody can relate to and go, "Wait a minute, that did happen to me too, and now I understand it." But yeah, it's a very real and very raw book of somebody going through a very significant transition.
Well, I have to say, honestly, I only had a chance to read the sample of it on Amazon where your book is listed, and there's a number of pages, and you really seem to relay. You relay the intensity of that period of your time, and it was definitely very rawly emotional for you.
Yeah, it was. And at the time, I had like 2 publishing companies that were interested, but they wanted me to take some things out because they were too intense. And I was like, well, that kind of defeats the purpose of writing the book. So the purpose of writing the book for me wasn't to write a book. Like that was never I'm a math major. That was not in my realm of comfort. So it wasn't just to have a book, it was to write something that people could relate to, because I was running into so many people that had these other experiences that were like, "Am I going crazy? Or did this happen, but I don't know what to think about it." And so when I wrote the book, I wrote it very real. This is how I responded. This is how I felt. This is what it was like. And a lot of people say, "Well, I'm scared to open up because I might get something might happen that might scare me," and things like this. And you know what? I straight up address those things in the book. Here's where I'm at. And my hope is that when people are done reading the book, they say, "Okay, yeah, it might be unusual, sometimes a little bit uncomfortable or not knowing, but in the end, I'll be okay."
Isn't it interesting that more than likely millions upon millions, if not hundreds of millions of people in the world have had similar experiences to you, but they stay quiet because within
Yeah.
the way we're taught, well, that's crazy, that's not real, but evidently it is real. And and that's what your job is too, help people to open up and know that you're not crazy. It's like one time when I was a radio disc jockey, I was on the air, and an earthquake hit, and immediately, it was a short one, not damaging, but it shook everybody. And immediately, all my phone lines lit up, and I would pick it up, and every single one said, "Am I crazy? Did I just experience that?" They all thought they were the only one to experience it. It's a similar type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's unnerving because, yeah, I tell my students, if you grew up in a culture that said your taste buds did not work, were not real, and you couldn't taste anything, and then you started tasting food, what do you do with that? Because you're instantly labeled. but yet it's happening and you can't write it off. Sure, here's like a prescription to shut down your taste buds, right? Or it's very similar to that. We really do have six senses, and we functioned off of that intuition in the beginning, and slowly over time we didn't need it. And today we have so much, there's different, this is right, this is wrong. There's so much right and wrong now that we're not invited to be in our natural state anymore, which is to be in tuned with, do I take a left or do I take a right? I mean, we used to be very in tune with it, but it's not that we don't need it, but we don't need it, if that makes sense. Not with Google smartphones, class schedules, like this is what you do, this is what you do, this is what you do. Yep, yep, yep. And then we end up in, middle of our lives feeling unhappy and not knowing why. And not knowing why. And it's like, well, because you lost touch with who you were.
I can't tell you how many times my GPS has sent me off in the wrong direction to Timbuktu, and I go, I was just listening to this, AI voice, and here I am in the wrong place. So
yeah, I know. Listening to ourselves is powerful. And I remember when I opened up, it was back in 2000, like I said, 2005, 6, 7, somewhere. So it was very early. And when I first started getting courage to tell people, especially strangers and stuff, what I did, that I was a medium. First off, that was hard to grab onto, but once I did, most people would ask me what that is, because back then there wasn't the television shows, Medium, Ghost Whisperer, all the ghost hunting shows. That wasn't out there back then. So a lot of people didn't know what a medium was. And when I would explain it, if I came across someone that was skeptic, which, as you've heard, I honor that path. But when I would come across someone that was skeptic, it never failed, Carl. They would always say, but there was this one time. And I'm like, yep, there's always this one time, right? And it's fair. We're all in tune. We all have intuition.
wow. That leads me to ask, you're a medium, but I would like to know, what's the difference between a psychic and a medium?
Oh, that's a great question. Because when people grasp the difference between those two, then they start to feel more of what's happening for them. Now, a psychic is going to be able to tap into the energies of something. So the energy of a location, of a person, of a time period, of a situation. So how you walk into a room and you don't know what's going on, but you walk in and you instantly know something's not okay, but visually you can't see why. That's psychic information. That's being able to tap into the energy of a person or situation. Mediumship is communicating with a being of some sort, whether that's a loved one on the other side, a spiritual guide, etc. So mediumship is communication between you and another, whereas psychic is absorbing information more through energy.
Yeah, that's a great explanation. Yeah, tapping into energy, and we've all had that experience. Exactly, you get into a situation or a place or something, and you can just tell right away something's weird. So
yeah, something's up, something's going on. Yeah, and everyone has a little bit of both. Some people are going to fall further to one side of that scale than the other. And me personally, I fall to the mediumship side a little bit more heavily than the psychic side. I've had psychic experiences, but what I tell my friends when it comes to explaining the difference is that if I lose my keys, it's very hard for me to just, like, a psychic could just close their eyes and relax into the energy of their keys and they'd be drawn to them. So for me, I just have to wait for someone deceased so I can go, hey, do you know where my keys are? And then hope for an answer. That's really the difference.
That's when grandma steps in again, right?
Yeah. It's like, could you tell me where my keys are? And then the best is when the person coming through goes, nope. And you're like, okay, I don't know what lesson this is, but I really got to go to the store. So
I saw it mentioned that you have channeled knowledge. Does this mean that entities, beings from different dimensions and realities will actually speak through you? I've had many channels on this show.
Yeah, channeled, channeled knowledge is an interesting term because I think it's gotten very spread out for what channeled really means in the spiritual world, which is fine. For me, what that looks like is collecting all of that information from Big Dog for those first 2 years. I listened to him, wrote it down. So that's sort of a channel as well. But I have worked with particular guides that have been able to work with me in speaking. I don't necessarily completely disconnect like some channels do, where it's a complete channel, but I have a lot of moments where it's a good 50-50, sometimes 70% the guide or the higher being speaking in that sense.
Yeah, I've had what they call trance channels on, where when they're done, they have to go back and listen to the recording because they have no idea what came through them, or at least not much.
Yeah,
So
and that's that 100% channel. For me, I'm always present there in some way, shape, or form. Interestingly, too, everyone's different intuitively. This is a very big block for a lot of people. They think that they see someone doing intuition and they think that's how it's done. And so then they try it that way and it doesn't work. So then they associate that with them not being intuitive. And I'm a big promoter of letting people know everyone is very different. So you have to figure out how yours works in order to really access all of it. So for me, when I channel, I kind of take a back seat and I'm witness to it. So I do actually remember that. But interestingly, when I tap in intuitively, I'm not channeling, I'm communicating. But in that situation, most often, I don't remember what came through the hour before. When you're in a very, very highly intuitive state, you tend to, it's your left brain tends to just kind of shut down and just like relax and like check out for a minute there. And you typically don't know the next word that's coming or what you just said. And that's when you're in a very heightened intuitive state. And that comes with practice and time.
yeah, it is really, really interesting. Now I've had many guests here on my show speak in detail about their near-death experiences. Now, each one talks about going into the light of unconditional love, being given a choice to either stay there or come back to their body and continue their mission. Is this what everybody experiences when they cross over to the other side? I know you're still alive and you haven't done that, but I mean, you've got a little more knowledge about this than others.
I love exactly how you asked that question, because it's true. We're never going to know until we go. That's just, it's not going to be the case. But if we can look at the similarities amongst people, we can start to see patterns that seem to make sense. For me, everything that I learned about the in-between and the transition process of crossing over, which is what people experience in near-death experiences, for me, I learned all of that from Big Dog initially in those first 2 years as I was meeting with him. He explained how it all worked. It all clicked and it made sense, because then I went out and I started listening to people with near-death experiences and their stories. I haven't had that experience myself. And I'm like, they're talking exactly about what Big Dog said. That's exactly what he said. And so that's how I learned about the death transition process. I then started working with spirits that were stuck, because on a rare occasion, somebody will pass, and instead of that kind of automatic pull people mover, it's usually a self-done thing where they stop the process of that automatic draw to the light of unconditional love, which is exactly what it is. So I tell people it's easy. You just got to let it happen. But the individuals that pass and then stop that process after death end up getting stuck in that in-between space. And there are people all over the world like me who do work with those spirits to help them get back into that automatic flow to cross over. And so I've done crossing over work for probably about 15 years now, most of which I do that's never seen or, heard or talked about. But if I run into a spirit that's struggling in some way, shape, or form, I will help them cross over.
That's really interesting. So yeah, a human who passes, but their spirit stays stuck in between. Is that what would qualify as ghosts that like people might see in a home or something like that?
Yeah, people, the general terms are a spirit would be someone that crossed over. And a ghost would be someone that's stuck in that process and hasn't finished the process. One of my favorite things to say is ghosts are people too, because pop culture has kind of invited us into thinking that a ghost is this scary thing that's trying to attack us. And Carl, most of the time it's like Aunt Marge, really, who's just, I've literally had clearings in homes where cabinets were opened randomly in the middle of the night. And like, I don't remember the name of the spirit that was stuck, but it was like Aunt Marge saying she's messing up my pie recipe. She thinks she can change it. And so to the homeowner, I remember saying to her, do these cabinets only open up in the middle of the night after you've made that pie? And she's like, holy cow, yeah. And I was like, well, you probably should stick to the original recipe. And it's not someone trying to hurt you. This is your great aunt. So, but it's like that, I don't remember all the specifics around it, but ghosts are just people that are in spirit form, but are stuck. We have 3 bodies. We have, and this, you'll see this all over the globe in all different cultures said in different ways. We've got the physical body, which is like our vehicle that we're using down here. We have the spiritual body, which is our spirit that goes back to the other side. And then we have what I call the programming body, which is our mind on linear time. It's our identity. It's, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So when somebody dies, they let go of that physical body. When they go into that in-between, and this is why people can have near death and still come back. In the in-between, you still have 2 bodies. You have the spirit and you have the programming body, which is your mind. It's who you are here in this lifetime. And thus, if somebody is stuck in the in-between, they are the exact same person they were here on Earth. They just don't have a physical body. Upon crossing over, we let go of that programming linear body and we reconnect with our higher self. So people that are stuck are the exact same people. They just don't have a body.
I would imagine those beings that are stuck, and you have helped them cross over. I bet they are overjoyed and grateful to you.
The most fascinating thing I've discovered about this process of crossing over is I rarely ever see 2 of the same situation. I mean, the numbers of the variety of situations that I've experienced in spirits that were stuck is astounding to me. I remember a woman who was driving to college in the 70s, high on a drug, thought she got in an accident, didn't realize she was dead, thought she was still on a bad drug trip. I've met moms in the in-between who knew they were dead, but they were not leaving their kids, right? I've had a lot of people who go into the in-between and they had such belief structures that they were going to go to a very bad place that they stopped the process because they were so scared. So there's a lot of different scenarios in the in-between. And with that said, there's a percentage of people who, when you connect with them and you say, I see you and I can help, they accept that love. They accept that calm that they need to continue. But then there are those that they see you, see them, see you, see them, and they're like, I'm not going anywhere. You can't make me go over there. And so that, that takes a little bit more work and a little bit more discussion and unconditional love and whatnot. But yeah, not everyone's happy to see you helping them move on. Yeah.
Well, this is a really interesting conversation. We're speaking with Isabeau Maxwell, otherwise known as Beau, which I love. I'd like to shift gears a little bit. You teach something called the SAGE method. What is it about and how does it work?
The SAGE method is, in essence, those same teachings that I got in the beginning from Big Dog. And he, like I said, he told me to bring it out into the world. I took a year or 2 of training, and the best I could do is condense it down to about 7 weeks, right? I couldn't really make it any shorter because there's practices and experiments that you need to do to, am I more psychic? Am I more medium? Does it work like this? Does it work like that? And I put that together and brought it out into the world. And I've been teaching that since 2008, 2009, somewhere around there. I taught it in person for a number of years. And back in 2019, my guides had put it online. So I did eventually get it online. It's an incredible course because it's not based in any one particular path. It's based in a very straightforward knowledge that this is your sixth sense. And the course is going to cover the blocks that get in the way, because it's not necessarily that you need to keep trying to be intuitive to gain intuition. It's very clear that it's already there. It's already 100% strong. We don't have certain people that are gifted and certain people that are not. Your intuition is already 100% strong. It's just covered up and cluttered with personal programming. So this course discusses that. And this course is really for people that are like, I want to understand how this works, and I want to finally get rid of the block that's stopping it. And then lastly, I want to know how mine works. I want to know how I'm wired intuitively, and that's what the course does. So it's a good training course. It's 7 weeks in length, but there's a lot to explore in there. And I get to witness people come out the other side, not only having accurate, more on-demand intuitive hits, but really guidance that improves their life. So that's very rewarding for me.
So the word SAGE, the way I see it on your website, is all capital letters, SAGE. Is that an acronym?
Yes, it stands for spirituality, alignment, growth, and empowerment.
Okay, excellent. Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, you can definitely check that out. What's your website? Your website again is thesagemethod.com.
Yep, the Sage Method, THESAGE method.com. I do a really good job of keeping everything in one spot.
Well, speaking of that, I did look at your webpage quite a bit doing some homework here. I noticed, at least in your testimonials, that most of your students are women. Why are women more open to this sort of thing than men?
You're very accurate with that. I would say 90 to 95% of my students are female. And I think what it is that females are more willing, not more willing, they're more wired to explore something that is fluid, right? Men tend to be very wired to the plan, the title, the outcome. What will my title be when I'm done? How does this exactly work? I need to understand the machine, right? The mechanics of it. So I think that's really the case. And also, women, especially in our society here, they're getting to 45, 50, 55 years old, and they're like, you know what? I'm all set with this personal programming, and I'm really excited to be who I am, where a lot of men have been able to explore that a little bit more freely as of recent years. I know times change, but intuition is a very fluid thing that is not 100% always accurate. I think women are a little bit more able to step into that flow.
Well, I think for me, as a man, as the years have gone by and as I've gotten older, I think myself, I think finally I started asking, oh, there's got to be something better than what I'm seeing here. Maybe I can be open to this. So, I know not every guy is like me, but there's got to be something better than this. And you're explaining it well. So, and when I hear what you're talking about, it really does provide some relief. Oh, it's not just all the crap I see of wars on CNN or something,
Exactly. And I think it's really beautiful that men and women in general, because there's a whole spectrum. So, there are women, and I tend to be a little bit more task oriented. What's the plan? What's going on as well? So the planning structure can be across all genders, right? And it's a very fluid type of spectrum. But with that said, in general, I've seen a lot of very masculine energy males come in and go, you know what? I can let go. And more things will happen if I'm not trying to control the outcome, and if I just release the outcome and go, okay, show me what you want to show me, and let's go along with this. So it's been very healing for the men that do come into the community. It's a very healing thing of like, wow, I thought I was open to a lot of possibilities, but now I really am, because now I've opened the door to that. And for women, I've seen a pattern of, which I think is very beautiful, probably because I've walked this path myself. I've seen a pattern of women go through the course and say, you know what? I can carve out time for myself. I can want for myself. I can follow my passions and put those first, you know? So I've seen a lot of healing on both ends of it. It's really quite beautiful to watch.
All right, guys watching or listening, you can connect with Isabeau Maxwell on her website, and
I'll still give you the plans and all that. I'll line it all up for you.
there we go. And as we wind down this little chat with Isabeau Maxwell here, we throw around this term spirituality, and that's a pretty broad term. What is your definition of spirituality?
My definition of spirituality is exploring and connecting to your higher source. So spirituality for me is more like an analogy is the best way to do it for myself, to explain it. And spirituality is like a mountain, and everyone is climbing the mountain, and everyone's climbing it on a different path. Spirituality is being able to climb that mountain. We're all going to get to the same spot. We're all going to the top of the mountain. We're all heading that way. Spirituality is the freedom to be able to explore your path up that mountain with what speaks to you and what resonates, instead of following a path that somebody else says, this is the path you're supposed to follow.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's beautiful. And I have kind of a big question. My own spiritual studies are based mainly on the teachings of the Modern Spiritual Guide, A Course in Miracles, which states that this life we live here in a body in human form is only a dream, an illusion of separation from our Creator, from God, and none of it is real. What are your thoughts on this?
Here's my thought. Disney World isn't real either, but I really love it.
Yeah. Great answer. I love it.
The thing is that to say on one side of this, I can absolutely say, yes, this is an experience. We've put ourselves into a linear timeline. So in that sense, you can say we're here, but we're not really here. It is a dream state. Absolutely. But you know what, at the end of the day, the human experience is still everything it is. We still love just as deeply. We still feel just as deeply. And so why not let it be a giant holodeck? I loved every minute of it. And I got to spend time in that holodeck with people that I love. So I'm on board.
I completely agree with you. So if it is an illusion, why not enjoy the ride while you're here?
Exactly. A lot of people that work with me hear me say it quite frequently. The best experience you can have here is a balanced one. Don't get lost down the spirituality, and don't get lost down the human paths. Find the balance between the two. You will have the best experience that way.
Yeah, one of the greatest teachers in the world of A Course in Miracles, Gary Renard, who I call a friend. He's been on my show 3 times, and this is one of the greatest teachers of a non-dualistic spirituality. He says the same thing you and I say. Enjoy the ride while you're here. We can still study and practice this, but we're here. So
yeah, people are like, oh, you're having a tough time. Can't you just tap in and get the answer? Well, yeah, but come on, just let me have my human moment too, right? So cherish all of it, and that's where the deepest experience is.
Well, one last thing before we let you go. You do something called intuitive readings. What exactly is that?
I do intuitive readings and intuitive coaching. I typically do that with students and clients, mostly just because of the demand, but in essence, it's tapping in for 2 different reasons. One, to see who your guides are, who's around you as far as family, what messages are coming through there, but also to talk about how the person is intuitively wired and what's coming up on their path and how they can navigate it. So those sessions are very close to my heart.
Yeah, and of course you can connect with Isabeau. That's Isabeau, Beau. I love. What's your website again?
thesagemethod.com.
And that's the best way somebody should connect with you.
Yeah, it's a great place to get started. I've got even like free video tools and things like that people can just try out to see what they think about their own intuition.
And make sure to check out her book, Cracking Open. What was it? The Adventures of a Reluctant Medium?
Yep.
Yeah, there we go. So it's definitely an interesting read. So, Isabeau, thank you so much for being on World Awakenings. What beautiful things you're doing in the world. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. This was absolutely wonderful.
This has been another episode of World Awakenings, the fast track to enlightenment with host Carl Gruber, a certified law of attraction life coach. We welcome you to tune in to each and every episode of World Awakenings as we open your mind, your heart, and your eyes to the fact that the world's population is now, more than ever, awakening to the truth of all things spiritual, metaphysical, and enlightening, and just how much they play an all-important role in our moment-to-moment daily life. Much love and light to you, my friend, and thank you for tuning into World Awakenings.